Now, it's delighting to see you again in the weekend edition of Into Vietnam, which summarizes the most outstanding macroeconomic events in the past week, following our major stories. The Purchasing Manager Index posted 51.8 points in December 2013. Positive signs are recorded for the banking sector in 2014. This week, we are joined by Mr. Louis Blancas, Transport and Logistics Specialist of the World Bank, who says efficient logistics can become a new boost for Vietnam's sustained growth in the coming time. Let's begin with this week's figure. In its latest report, the HSBC says Vietnam manufacturing output increased for the third month running and at the fastest pace since April 2011. The report showed that business conditions in Vietnamese manufacturing sector improved in December as output and employment increased at sharper rates supported by new order growth. Meanwhile, purchasing activity rose at the fastest pace in the series history. The rate of input cost inflation accelerated slightly, but manufacturers lowered their output prices in an attempt to support growth of new business. The PMI posted 51.8 in December, up from 50.3 in November. The reading signaled a fourth successive monthly improvement in operating conditions and the second strongest in the history of the series. New orders increased for the third time in the past 4 months during December. New export orders decreased for a second consecutive month. Growth of new orders led firms to raise their production. Inventory fell solidly as firms delivered products to customers. HSBC says rising workloads had a positive impact on employment in December, with the rate of job creation picking up to the strongest in 3 months. Meanwhile, the rate of expansion of purchasing activities hit a record high as panelists reported a greater need for inputs in response to rising client demand. The banking sector in Ho Chi Minh City will likely achieve a credit growth rate of 14% in 2014. The State Bank Governor says the growth rate will make an important contribution to increasing the entire banking sector growth rate to between 12 and 14%. The city target was feasible given that many programs were being implemented to strengthen cooperation between local banks and enterprises. To realize the projected credit growth target for 2014, leaders of Ho Chi Minh City People's Committee says they will work with the State Bank to carry out monetary, credit and interest rate policies in ways that will ensure the stability of financial market and operations of local banks. Accordingly, programs will be carried out along with country key projects, including links between banks and enterprises, social housing loans and investments stimulation. The National Securities Committee says in 2013, foreign investors net bought more than 6.8 trillion dong or $325 million in the local market, up 55% from the previous year. Transactions of foreign investors have made a great contribution to helping the VN Index from avoiding a deep fall to gain 22% in the year. Experts believe the tremendous flow of foreign funds will create a big boost for the market this year. The Securities Committee says by the end of last year, Vietnam's stock market posted a total capital value of 964 trillion dong, or 31% of GDP, up 199 trillion dong from the end of 2012. This year, some measures will be introduced to boost the market, like enhancing the use of new products, building the centralized payment, lending and borrowing model to pave the way for secondary markets and new products. And coming up next is some major macroeconomic and investment news.
Encouraging movements in business activities, spike service, liquidity, credit and capital mobilization in the banking system in the fourth quarter of 2013 signal a brighter 2014 for the sector. This is the outcome of Business Trends Survey of credit institutions in Vietnam for Q1 of 2014. The survey was conducted from November 22nd to December 10th of 2013 by the State Bank of Vietnam. According to the survey, almost all credit institutions stated that in Q4 2013, their liquidity remained stable or improved, while the ratio of bad debts to outstanding loans was down. These trends are expected to continue this year. They also said positive changes were seen in internal factors that directly affect the business activities and get better in 2014. The factors include financial strength, human resources, technology, risk management capacity, policies on credit interest rate and exchange rates, and customer services. Additionally, external factors like the central bank's regulations governing credit, interest and exchange rates and banking operations, or market demand and competitiveness from other credit institutions is said to be stable and likely to advance in 2014. A slight growth in demand for banking services, particularly savings and lending ones, was also reported in Q4 and is forecast to continue.
Real estate credit to be loosened. This is the confirmation by the chairman of the National Financial Supervisory Commission in the seminar Financial and Credit Policies for Real Estate in 2014. During the past time, lending interest rates for real estate sector has been cut down significantly. In 2014, they will be further lowered based on macroeconomic situation and inflation. However, a closer look will be taken each segment and project to have reasonable allocation of capital and interest. The State Bank of Vietnam has allowed debt restructuring as well as assessing the financial situation of real estate companies to continue lending to their projects with many incentives and favorable conditions than normal. Currently, real estate loans accounts for only 6.5% of total loans, and real estate bad debt level is not higher than the general level.
Ho Chi Minh City managed to achieve high economic growth and low inflation in the 2011-2013 period. After over 25 years of renewal, Ho Chi Minh City has significantly contributed to the country's socio-economic development. Its average annual growth in the period was 9.6%, 1.7 times the national average. While it was unable to hit the 2013 growth target, the city still managed 9.3% growth. Its per capita income rose to $4,513. Its economic restructuring is on the right track, focusing on major industries and increasing value addition to the service sector. Ho Chi Minh City has brought inflation under control, with the average CPI growth in the period rising by 9.6%, only 57% of the country's CPI growth rate. In 2013, Vietnam Asset Management Company or VAMC bought 38.9 billion dong of non-performing loans. In 2014, VAMC will continue to buy 70 to 100 trillion dong of non-performing loans by special bonds and complete the plan to buy debts at the market prices together with the plan to sell debts. In order to do so, besides the possible proposal for increase of charter capital to 2 trillion dong, VFC is considering calling for foreign investment and restructuring for businesses with ability to recover but lack of resources. However, there are still legal hurdles need to remove, such as property ownership, especially foreign ownership of real estate or foreign ownership percentage of shares in businesses. For businesses with no possibility of recovery, VAMC will handle by auctioning and sales of assets. However, the difficulty here is to complete the procedures, process and auction. VAMC said there are many investors, both domestic and foreign, intend to buy bad debts from it, but to sell them cheap at any prices is not a good solution.
The Vietnamese labor market this year will see just a 6 to 8% salary increase due to the sluggish economy. The forecast was made by Nicola Connolly, chairwoman of the Eurocharm Human Resources and Training Sector Committee. She said that minimum wage insurance in the third quarter is expected to reach 3.2 million dong, or $152.3. The outlook for the Vietnamese labor market is contingent on various global trends: high unemployment rate, production shift, the increasing skill gap and shortage, freelancing become an ever more normal way of life, and the internet, which is creating a larger marketplace for jobs. She said that it will be harder for new entrants in the workplace to find jobs. The recruitment cycle will become longer and more focused on right hire. Existing non-performer metrics on productivity and return on investment will all gain greater importance. The Construction Ministry predicts that Vietnam's total consumption of cement will see a year-on-year increase of 3% and reach 63 million tons this year. Of the figure, domestic consumption is likely to hit 48.5 to 49 million tons, while the remaining 13.5 to 14 million tons will be exported. In 2013, local cement plants produced 70 million tons, and about 61 million tons were consumed, exceeding the yearly set target and rising 13.9% on year. Approximately 47 million tons were sold in the domestic market, and around 14 million tons were exported. The Vietnam National Oil and Gas Group, or PetroVietnam, has targeted 55 trillion dong, or $2.6 billion, of its total pre-tax profits this year, 12.4% lower than the previous year. PetroVietnam targets to increase the reserve to 55 to 61 million tons and exploit the equivalent amount of 26.63 million tons. The group basically exceeded the targets and tasks as planned for 2013. Total sales of its member units reached 762.8 trillion dong, up 18% from the year plan. Notably, the group achieved the reserve amount of 35.6 million tons, equivalent to 101.7% of the yearly plan. The total oil production in 2013 was estimated at 26.5 million tons, equal to 105% of the yearly plan. Power production and supply to the national power grid reached 16.17 billion kilowatt-hour, equal to 116.7% of the annual target. For trade news, we continue the program.
Vietnam's export turnover from fiber, textiles, and garments surpassed $20 billion in 2013, up 80% from 2012, and surpassing targets by over $1 billion. Such an outcome puts the commodities at the top of Vietnam's key exports. The sector also maintains considerable growth in major markets such as the US, the EU, Japan, the Republic of Korea, and Asia. Last year, Vietnam's exports of these goods to the US increased by 13% in the context that total textile and garment imports into the US only rose 3%. This market alone generated more than $8 billion for Vietnam's textiles and garment sector, representing 45% of the sector's export revenue in 2013. The growth in 2013 was attributable to investment in expansion made by businesses, thus boosting the sector's production. Vietnam for the first time earned over $3 billion from shrimp exports in 2013, up 36% from the previous year. The outcome was attributed to higher export prices as a result of a sharp fall in global shrimp output, while leg shrimp saw high growth in production and value, bringing home an estimated $1.4 billion in 2013, doubling the previous year's figure and accounting for 50% of the country's total shrimp exports. In addition, China increased imports of Vietnamese shrimp to make up for its shortages resulted from the disease. The country became the third biggest market of Vietnamese shrimp, with its imports value of over $349 million in the first 11 months of 2013. With this success, Vietnam aims to rake in $3.5 million from shipping this kind of aquatic products abroad this year. However, the Vietnam Association of Seafood Exporters and Producers warned that shrimp exports in 2014 might not be as easy as last year, as countries considerably affected by EMS like China, Thailand, and India start to recover their production.
In the structure of Vietnam export commodities, logistics cost is now accounting for 20 to 40% of the selling price, of which the transportation cost is at about 70%. Business says transportation cost is too high and affects the whole production process of their firms, leading to the lower competitiveness of Vietnamese exports in the international market. More to follow.
Hong An Agricultural Product Import-Export Company Limited specializes in exporting fruit products, mainly dragon fruit, to Southeast Asia, China, Japan, Europe, and the U.S. market. Their representative said, so far their export of dragon fruit have not achieved the desired results. Firstly, the preservation technology cannot meet the demand for the fruit to go far, and secondly, the high transportation costs push up the price of their products. Therefore, the company's products cannot compete with other rivals in the region.
Các thị trường gần đây, thị trường châu Á, thị trường Trung Quốc, thì cái thời gian nó vận chuyển nó gần, thì tôi nghĩ là có thể mình thâm nhập được nhiều, nhưng vẫn còn rất là hạn chế so với Thái Lan, rất là còn kêu bằng rất là cái khả năng tiêu thụ của mình rất còn bé so với Thái Lan. Tại vì bây giờ ngay cả trong cái vấn đề này nó có liên quan đến vấn đề vận chuyển. Tôi nói bây giờ vừa rồi tôi xuất dừa đi Mỹ chẳng hạn. Trong khi Thái Lan và Trung Quốc thì nó tài trợ cái chi phí vận chuyển, trong khi mình không có tài trợ chi phí vận chuyển. Thậm chí bây giờ xuất những trái cây mà nó đòi DE, tức là đi đường hàng không ở đây mình xuất đến 3 đô 8 một ký là 3 đô 8, trong khi đó bên kia nó chưa tới 1 đô. Nội cái tiền chênh lệch đó thì nó đã là bao nhiêu tiền rồi so với 1 ký.
According to the research of experts from Vietnam Academy of Science, in our traditional production, enterprises had to take care of both the input, output, and certainly production. At that time, capital in storage accounted for 70% of their total capital. In logistics-based production, producers are accompanied by the logistics service providers. Although the costs for logistics are not low, enterprises can reduce the storage costs. However, at present, logistics cost in Vietnam is too high.
Hiện nay chi phí vận tải ở Việt Nam, đặc biệt là chi phí vận tải nội địa rất cao. Chị có tin không, chở một container từ Đà Nẵng vào tới Sài Gòn thì đắt hơn nhiều chở từ Đà Nẵng đi Nhật. Mà như chị biết ở chúng ta chi phí chúng ta cao nhưng chất lượng chúng ta không tương ứng. Như chị biết là chi phí của chúng ta cao không phải là vì chúng ta cao, vì ở trong đó các yếu tố khác nó rất là cao. Tất cả đều nằm trong giá thành hết. Và tất cả những cái ấy đều làm cho cái sản phẩm của Việt Nam không có cái khả năng cạnh tranh với những sản phẩm cùng loại của các doanh nghiệp khác.
Experts say the rate of logistic costs on GDP of a nation will reflect the optimization of movement, transportation, and storage of materials from pre-production to final consumption stage. For example, at present, statistics show that Vietnam's total logistic costs accounted for 25% of GDP, while in developed countries like the US or Japan, the figure is only 8 to 9% of GDP. In China and Thailand, the rate is above 19%.
Thực ra thì vừa rồi thì chúng tôi cùng phối hợp với lại một cái viện logistics đánh giá lại cái chi phí của công tác logistics Việt Nam. Thì thường ở bình quân ở các nước phát triển thì cái tổng cái chi phí logistics là nó đâu đó vào khoảng cỡ 16 đến 17% GDP. Nhưng con số ở Việt Nam lên đến 32, 34% GDP. Đây là một cái vấn đề rất là nhức nhối. Bởi vì thực ra thì cái năng lực cạnh tranh của một quốc gia, trên cơ sở đó thì là năng lực cạnh tranh của các doanh nghiệp, thì nó sẽ được cắt giảm các cái chi phí trên rất là nhiều công đoạn trong cái quá trình sản xuất, phân phối, vận chuyển đến người tiêu dùng ở trong thị trường nội địa, cũng giống như xuất khẩu ra quốc tế.
Logistics is considered a supporting tool for marketing and business because the ultimate goal is bringing added values, of which the most important thing is to deliver products in right time, right place, right quality, and right prices, as expected by the consumers. Therefore, since 2005, ASEAN countries have seen logistics as one of 12 prioritized sectors for ASEAN integration.
The World Bank says while Vietnam has attained a strong track record of economic growth over the past 2 decades, the drivers that fueled the growth are rapidly depleting, making it critical to develop new drivers of growth going forward. In the context, efficient logistics can become a new driver of sustained growth through the positive impact on productivity and the direct influence on business competitiveness. Regarding the issue, VITV reporter had a talk with Mr. Luis Blancas, Transport and Logistics Specialist of the World Bank. Mr. Luis Blancas, thank you so much for joining our program today. First of all, can you give a very clear definition of effective logistics?
To us, efficient logistics is specifically defined as more predictable logistics. We think that by far and away the most important challenge facing logistics operations in Vietnam is that they are subject to exceptions all throughout the supply chain, delays, things that go not as planned, and then the itineraries get very long or they're just erratic all the time. So to us, what we define as efficient logistics is logistics that are predictable. It means that firms can be better able to plan ahead and they know what to expect. And by this, then they can, the impact that it has is that they can reduce the amount of inventory that they hold so that their logistics are less costly. And in that way, Vietnam can be more competitive compared to maybe countries like Malaysia, China, Thailand, that right now we think their logistics are a little more predictable compared to Vietnam.
The World Bank said Vietnam has achieved a very high economic growth in the past 20 years. However, the drivers for economic growth are depleting. Say that logistics can be a new driver for economic growth in 2014, and how so?
We think that logistics is a source of productivity growth. If you look at what drove the growth of Vietnam over the past 20 years, we see two main sources of that growth. One was a shift of economic activity out of low productivity agricultural activities towards higher productivity industrial and manufacturing activities. That was the first source. The second source was just a very, very rapidly growing labor force. Both of those sources are now depleting. And so what drives economic growth on the long run is productivity, is more production per dollar of investment or per dong of investment and more production per person. Now, if you look at logistics and better logistics, so what we were just talking about now, about more predictable logistics, if you are able to better manage your itineraries, to have fewer exceptions, to have your goods delivered on time every time, then if you have lower inventory in your system, you don't have that capital tied up to the inventory of those goods, and that capital can then be used for other purposes, for purposes that are going to enhance productivity, purposes like, for example, investing in the capital stock of the companies, in their technology, in the human capital of their employees, to better prepare them to be more competitive out there in the marketplace. And so we think that efficient logistics is linked to a reallocation of resources within the firm, resources that are right now being used for inefficient outcomes, like, for example, unnecessary inventory, towards uses that can enhance productivity. And so by having higher productivity, or higher production per person, essentially, then you end up with higher economic growth, which is what we want for Vietnam.
What are your general assessments of Vietnam logistics sector in the current condition?
From our perspective, the logistics sector in Vietnam, it's doing well overall. I mean, it is not our message here that logistics is somehow a major drag on the economy. It can be improved, that's for sure, but it has been able to accommodate unprecedented growth. I mean, the external sector of Vietnam, which is based on an export-led growth model, has been growing very, very fast. And Vietnam has benefited from competitive low labor rates, has benefited from shifting manufacturing activity out of China and into other countries in Asia, but primarily Vietnam. Vietnam is well located geographically next to the main east-west trades. It has a lot of very good things going for it. A good geographical position, vast inland waterways resources, a very, very long coastline, a very active labor force. It has a lot of good things going for it. We just think that logistics can be further improved so that it can better address the demands out there. So a good track record so far, but now the key to the future is now that Vietnam is a middle income country and that the commodities that are being moved now have a higher value added content to them. Then we need to make the logistics industry make that extra step towards better quality of services. We see subpar quality of services in trucking, warehousing, container handling, so that we are able to better respond to the demand, very real demand out there in the marketplace, to move commodities that have a higher value-added content to them.
And finally, what are your recommendations for Vietnamese government to improve the logistic and transport sector to boost trade in the economy?
It's important to tell your audience that logistics is to a very important extent driven by the private sector rather than the public sector. Okay, it's very important that the private firms get themselves to the level that they need to be. Now, obviously, the government has also a role to play, but it's important to emphasize that also the private sector needs to do a lot of things. But on the government side specifically, what we see is a major need for more integrated planning. We see that planning is done in silos. We see that planning is done on a piecemeal fashion. And so you see, for example, roads that then are not consistent with the ports that they are connected to, for example, that you build a port, there's no road that leads to it. So we need to think about corridors. We need to move away from thinking about roads or bridge or port or this specific piecemeal investments, but a whole corridor from origin to destination, including roads, waterways, ports, warehouses, access, customs. The entire supply chain needs to be integrated. So we think that the government can do a better job in better integrating their agencies to come up with better integrated infrastructure planning for exports and imports.
And thank you so much for joining our program today.
Thank you very much.
As usual, the final part is the summary of the local securities markets. And that's all for now. Thank you so much for your attention. For comments and feedbacks, you can reach us via email at intovietnam@vitv.vn or give us a call at 0422208288. Goodbye for now.